Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today is my first tutorial and I'm super excited, a little bit nervous, but I am ready to show you guys what I can do and to help you guys out, and hopefully you can learn some new tips about makeup application. So we're just going to do a basic makeup tutorial for beginners, including a lot of drugstore like affordable makeup. So I've basically learned everything I know about makeup from YouTube and just from, watching other YouTube videos and things like that, going to Sephora. So I'm not a professional by any means, but I am entirely self-taught, and I hope I can help you guys learn some more. So a really important thing to start off with is to have a good face, skincare routine. So it's really important to use moisturizer and just take care of your skin. Everyone's skin has different needs, but everyone's needs moisture regardless of if you're dry skin or oily. Oily skin actually should still use moisturizer because your skin might be oily because it's dry, if that makes any sense. Your skin will overproduce oil if it's not getting moisture. So if you're not putting any moisturizer on your skin because your skin's oily and you think it doesn't need it, you actually might be doing more harm than good to your skin. So I use just a moisturizer that's to help reduce acne. I use that and then I let that sit for a few minutes, and then I use primer. You don't have to use primer, but I do think it's kind of important. I use the Too Faced HangoveRx. It's a really moisturizing one that's not drugstore, obviously. I just like it because it's more of like a lotion. It's not like silicone based, because silicone is kind of that jelly thing that can make your skin, it makes your skin feel really smooth, but that can break a lot of people out. An important tip is to use a primer that corresponds with your foundation. So I use the L'Oreal Infallible Pro Glow. Just a heads up, this is going to be a long video, so feel free to skip through parts of it. So this is the L'Oreal Infallible Pro Glow. This is a water-based foundation, so I used a water-based primer, and the Too Faced one is. And then I go ahead and put on foundation. I also use a Beauty Blender sponge. This is about $20 from Sephora, but if you don't want to spend $20 on a sponge, because I mean, who does? This is it's a good sponge, I will say that, but you don't need to buy it. You can just get, like the $8 Real Techniques ones. They sell those at Walmart and Ulta, and there's just a ton of sponges you can use. I like sponges because I find that they look most natural on the skin. So some people put the sponge, I put it on my hand. Some people take the sponge, press it, and then do that. If I do that, I find that it absorbs a little bit more foundation that I would like, so I just prefer to dot it all around my face and then buff it out. So remember to blend down by your ears and your neck, because most foundations aren't going to be a perfect match, especially at the drugstore. Like, no matter what, there's going to be a slight difference in your skin tone. So to make it look less obvious, we blend it down our neck and down our ears so no one can tell. So I like to kind of just press it into the skin. This is the best way to use a Beauty Blender sponge, not to drag it. You want to press it in and like bounce it. That's what it's dedicated for. Also, wet this. You cannot use these sponges dry. It will do nothing for you. So you have to use them damp. Remember to blend down, because if you don't blend down your neck, you'll have a mask on your face and people will probably make fun of you behind your back. And you don't want that. So you just want to pat it into the skin and blend it out, and this way you get a more natural but still full coverage, and it like presses it into your skin. If you use a brush, it might drag it around, it might sit on the surface, and you might get brush streaks. So you can blend for pretty much as long as you like. The more you blend, the more natural and more nice it'll look. So now that that's all blended out, I do have the Tarte Shape Tape Concealer, but the concealers I would recommend. Any other products I'll link down below, like I'll link everything I used, but I do like the Maybelline Fit Me and the, what is it? Is it the Maybelline? The one that's the eraser one, that's Maybelline. So with concealer, I just put foundation pretty much all over my face. But with concealer, I put it underneath my eyes. Some people do the triangle, where you put concealer in a triangle shape and it makes it look brighter. But this concealer specifically is extremely full coverage. So people who use all that much of this concealer, like if you use this concealer specifically to do that, you just don't need it. You're wasting concealer. But I would recommend going in a triangle shape, so putting it like that. And then that way, I kind of just distribute it in that same pattern, but I don't apply it like that on my face. I do this because it's a really brightening concealer, and when you apply it in a triangular shape, it'll help bring a brightening effect to your face. Now, I just kind of apply this on my forehead, my chin, places that I just want to brighten up. So this concealer is really, really bright. How many times can I say bright? So I don't really use it to spot conceal like pimples, because that'll just make the pimple look brighter. And why would I do that? If you want to spot conceal pimples, you might want to get 2 concealers depending on if your one concealer is that bright. But that way, you can brighten up your under eyes and then spot conceal your pimples. If you're spot concealing pimples, you should just use one that's around the same color as your foundation, so around the same color as your skin tone. Concealer should be lighter than foundation, like 1 to 2 shades. Don't go too crazy, because then it'll just be a bit too overdone. Also, when you're spot concealing pimples, I find it's most effective to use your finger and pat it in, like pat it around, because you don't want to shove a bunch of product in pimples anyway, because that'll just clog them and make them worse. But that way I find, like if I use a sponge or a brush, it just glides over the pimple and you can still see it, but if you pat it in, you can get a really precise application. So I am going to be using the Rimmel Stay Matte Powder. I used this for a long time. I still like it. This is in the shade Translucent. I just don't find that it controls my oils as well as I want it to. So I just take this big fluffy Real Techniques brush. I love this brush so much. And I just pat it into my skin. Don't put on too much though, because the more powder you put on, the more cakey your foundation will look, which means it kind of just looks like you're wearing foundation, and you know, it just might look funny. So it's most important to set your face, because if you don't, then your foundation and concealer might slide everywhere and it might last, and your concealer might crease and get caught up in the wrinkles underneath your eyes, and it just won't look as nice, and you might get oily if you do have oily skin. Yeah, so I don't have a eyeshadow primer to share with you guys today, and so I'm just going to use my concealer. By the way, be gentle on your eyes. They're a really sensitive part of your face, and if you just beat them around, and you'll get wrinkles prematurely, and no one wants that. So I just put some concealer on, and then I'm going to prepare my eyeshadow brushes. By the way, some people do eyeshadow first. It depends on your preference. The reason some people do eyeshadow before their face is because you can get fallout, meaning a bunch of the eyeshadow powder goes underneath your eyes and you have to sweep it away. So if you're using really powdery, dusty eyeshadows, I would recommend that. I pretty much just do my face first, just because that's how I roll. I am going to be using the Wet n Wild contouring palette in Dulce de Leche. I'm going to be taking some of this powder, and I'm just going to dust that over my eyes. So if you don't want to buy eyeshadow primer, you can just put concealer on your eyelids and then put some powder on it to set it, and you don't need to buy eyeshadow primer. So we're going to go ahead and do my eyebrows. I'm going to give you guys a warning. I have not really mastered eyebrows. I don't know if I ever will, because I feel like a lot of people change their eyebrows a lot, like their preferred shape. I will say, I don't really enjoy like Instagram makeup. I'm not saying, you know, makeup's an art. It's just like you can do so many things with it. But I don't really like the fake looking eyebrows. I don't really like my foundation. Like, I like doing makeup, but I don't want my makeup to look extremely over the top in person. So this is the NYX Microbrow eyebrow pencil in the shade Espresso. So there's like a little pencil, and then there's a little spoolie underneath this. Basically what I do is I go underneath my eyebrows and I make lines to trace them. This is my least favorite eyebrow. All of us who like do our eyebrows have a favorite eyebrow, I promise. This is my least favorite eyebrow. Remember, eyebrows are sisters, not twins. I like to say mine are cousins because they look very distantly related, because I can never get them to look similar to me. But And then I go kind of up here where if I had an arch, my arch would be, but I don't really have an eyebrow arch. And I kind of just do lines on the outside. I don't fill in a ton. I fill in a little bit of the front with this pencil, but I go lightly. I don't apply too much pressure. And you do a bunch of strokes over and over again to just build up the color. And then I take the spoolie. Spoolies are your best friend for your eyebrows. And I just blend it out a little bit, and then I'll do the same thing on the other eyebrow. Don't overdo it on your eyebrows. Like I said, makeup is an art, so it's a total preference. And I think less is more, but that's just me. I kind of stick with my basic eyebrow shape and just kind of fix it. See, what drives me nuts is I don't understand this eyebrow. Now I'm going to take the NYX eyebrow cake powder in my own Rite Aid brush because I prefer this brush, and I'm taking the darker and the lighter shade, mixing them, and just kind of filling in a little bit of powder here. My eyebrow is really sparse here, and I don't know why. And sometimes I take it and I put it, I generally go like this way, but I'll move it and make it vertical and just make little hair-like strokes. Ugh. And then I'll go just kind of randomly throughout the eyebrow and apply more powder where I think my eyebrows are looking sparse. So that's basically what I do for mine. I have the Essence eyebrow gel as well I might put in. I want to get another eyebrow gel because I need something to help my eyebrows stay in place just a little bit better. So this is in the shade Browny Brows. I like this. It's like a little tinted eyebrow gel, and it has fibers in it, so it kind of thickens them up and darkens them a little. We're going to move on to eyeshadow. I told you this video would be long. We're going to be using the Wet n Wild Comfort Zone eyeshadow palette, and I actually am going to be also using the Physicians Formula Butter Bronzer. I'm using this on my eyes because I wanted this isn't a totally matte bronzer, but it's more matte than the eyeshadows I'm using, and I wanted a transition shade. I'm going to take this and I just pat off the excess and take it with a really fluffy brush. So a transition shade is a color that is usually just a lighter, generally a neutral brown, and you take it and you buff it in your crease and slightly above the socket, so not directly into here but a little bit above, so that when you put all of your other eyeshadows on and continue to layer, they'll look more natural because they'll be kind of like a faded effect, so it won't be like a harsh line between your dark eyeshadows and your light eyeshadows. So this isn't an extremely pigmented bronzer, so I am going back into it and then continuing to tap out the excess. So you don't need to apply too much of a transition color because it'll be kind of blended out by the other eyeshadow. Okay, I'm so sorry about that. I had some issues with filming with my footage, so I just stopped the camera. So off camera I decided to do half of my face so I could do the other half on camera, so it would go by a little bit faster so I didn't have to do both sides. I will say it looks a lot more subdued on camera. Hopefully I can maybe turn off some lights so you guys can see the actual contour, bronzer, and blush I have on. I've noticed that, especially with other YouTubers, the really bright lights do make your makeup look a lot more toned down than it really is. When I last saw you guys, I was putting on some transition shades, and now I'm going to go in with some actual eyeshadows. So I do have the Comfort Zone eyeshadow palette right here. I will say eyeshadow is probably something you would want to invest in more heavily because drugstore eyeshadows, just as a whole, aren't that great. And the quality of more expensive eyeshadows, not even like super expensive eyeshadows, but the quality of, you know, a little bit more higher end brands eyeshadows is a lot better than drugstore brands. So if you buy that, you might have an easier time with blending and things like that, and just the color selection overall and everything. So these shades are pretty shimmery or satin finish, meaning they do have some sort of shimmer or sheen, so they're not entirely matte. That's why I wanted to lay down the matte transition shade, because I generally take more matte colors in my crease in here because we're trying to create definition and shadows, and naturally shadows don't have shimmer to them, so that's why most people take matte colors into their crease and eye socket. So I took the color that says crease, which is the bottom brown right here, And I'm taking that again with my Sigma really fluffy brush, and I'm dipping at the very tip of the brush in so I can get the most product at the tip of it. And I'm just very lightly putting that a little bit lower than where I just put the last transition shade, just to make my crease look a little bit more defined. Okay, and then I'm going to take my Sigma E25. This is a taper blending, so it's a little bit more, the tip's a bit smaller so you can get a little bit more precision. And I'm going to still take that same crease shade and just buff it a little bit more into the eye socket right here. And the key to blending is windshield wiper motion, so back and forth. Blending is the most important part of applying eyeshadow. But again, don't be too rough because your eyes are very delicate. So now I'm going to take the last shade, which is that definer shade on the bottom. And again, with the tip of this brush, I'm gonna put it in there. So the reason I do it on the tip is because that way I can just place it right exactly where I want it. So you want to put it on the outer V. The outer V is this V shape you have here with this line meeting your outer eyelid. So that's often referred to as the outer V of the eye, and you put the darkest shade there because that will create more dimension and more depth to your eye to make your eye look wider and larger, and you make your eye socket look bigger. So I'm just blending back and forth and slowly bringing that into the inner part of the crease right here. I don't want to put it in too much because if I put a ton of dark shadow in there, it might make my eye look smaller and reverse the effect I'm going for. So I'm just lightly taking that color into this upper portion of the crease. When you apply eyeshadow, often the transition shade is lost in it. So you might want to take it and go right above again and just blend it out. So basically, the way I figure out if my eyeshadow looks even and blended is I tilt my head back like this and I look back and forth, and then I keep blending because this is a good way to see how blended your eyes really look. Blending just gets rid of all of those harsh edges, so your makeup looks just more buffed out. So now I'm going to take the eyeshadow shade, the eyelid shade, which is the second shade right here, and I'm going to be using my finger, just gently just pat that and swipe that on my lid. This way you can get a lot of pigment on your finger. If you use a brush, you can still get pigment, but I find that applying just really shimmery shades to the lid with your finger is the best to get the brightest effect. I apply my shimmer shades a little bit higher than my actual eyelid. I apply them to this inner portion of my lid to almost the end of it, but so about 3/4 of my lid. But I put it slightly above where my natural eyelid ends because I'll show you. So when I close my eye, if I only put it on the eyelid, you really wouldn't see the really pretty shimmer shade I have on my lid. So I apply it slightly higher up here so you can still see it. It kind of depends on your eye shape as well. I don't have extremely big eyelids or an extreme amount of space to apply eyeshadow, so you just gotta work with what you got. Now I'm going to be taking my CoverGirl Full Lash Bloom and Waterproof. So I'm just taking my eyelash curler. Some people don't curl their eyelashes. I personally need to. So some people do short little pumps, or some people do one really long one. But I need to curl my lashes because I don't really have naturally curly lashes at all. Mine are very straight. And I've found that most people I've told to use eyelash curlers prefer using the curler versus not, because it just lifts your eyelashes up and makes them look longer and just more lifted, and I think it just creates a really pretty effect. Now also, I'm not using eyeliner in this tutorial because I don't wear eyeliner all the time. So when you're putting on mascara, it's good to like wiggle the brush up. That way you can get the most product distribution and to avoid clumps. I only apply 1, maybe 2 coats of a mascara depending on the mascara. I just find most mascaras clump and just don't look that great if I do a bunch of coats of them. So I'm going to take the Wet n Wild contour kit. I'm going to take this little brush. You don't really need this, but I'm just using this I'm going to dip into the contour shade. So I'm going to make a little fish face. And right here, it's usually the line where like around the end of your eyebrow is. I go a little bit farther back, but like right here to about right here. So it depends on your preference. I have like little freckles to match up to if I want to. I just don't go past like the middle of what would be my eye if I went like this. I don't like going all the way down here. I stop right about here. So I will go make a pucker face and just apply the contour right in the hollows of the cheekbones. The point of contour is to create a shadow, so it makes your face, your cheeks look more sculpted and makes you look thinner essentially. So contour is just meant to make your face look a little slimmer and your cheekbones look more defined. I don't do this on an everyday basis either. But contour is supposed to be more cool toned, and it's not really supposed to have shimmer or anything because shadows again don't have that naturally. So that's what about as much as I put on. And then I'll take my Physicians Formula Butter Bronzer. I take this little bit of a more fluffy brush and I just tap it in, tap off the excess like that. And then I take it a little bit higher than the natural contour and a little bit closer to my temples and my hairline, and I just buff it. So I do this a little bit lighter too. I'm not putting that much pressure on my hand, and I just kind of blend it out. Bronzer is meant to just warm up the skin, because when you put on all this foundation and all this concealer, your face kind of looks more evened out, but it looks very flat. So you put all these blush and bronzers and contours and highlights to create more dimension to your face and to make it look more alive. Also, I take the brush and I take a little bit down here, because that way you can create a little bit of a shadow down here just to kind of even it out. Some people use the 3 method, so it's like this, a 3 on your face, but generally I only apply contour here and then bronzer here. People apply bronzer or contour also on their forehead to make their foreheads look smaller. I have a pretty small forehead, but I find that I like putting bronzer up there just to kind of even out my face and make it look more warmer and more alive. So yeah, so I'm just gonna blend that in one more time. So I'm gonna take this blush in the Gwen Stefani palette in the shade Cherry. I don't have a drugstore blush with me on hand, so sorry, but you can find a ton of them. Wet n Wild's Color Icon ones are really good. So basically, I'm gonna go right here, like not so too high on my cheekbones, kind of like the apples. So if you smile, like right here where you naturally blush, right here. You don't have to smile when you do it, but that's easier to find where to place it. And I sweep upwards, like kind of diagonally, because that will make your face look like pulled back a little bit brighter, a little bit younger. So I just lightly sweep it upward. It's easier to build blush up than to get rid of it, so remember that. Don't just put a ton on and then... Okay, now for the fun part. So I have the Wet n Wild highlighting powder in the shade Precious Petals. So I'm taking this Morphe G37 brush and just taking it right here on the tops of my cheekbones, going back and forth, and then blending it in circular motions on my skin to kind of just press it in there, make it a little bit more natural. So the point of highlight is to just make your cheekbones look higher and to brighten them. So blush, bronzer, and highlight adds dimension to your face and generally will pull your face upward and make you look a little younger, a little thinner. So I will take a little bit down the bridge of my nose. I don't really like highlighting a ton on the tip of my nose. There's a lot of people that put a ton right here, but I think that makes the end of your nose look fatter. That's just my opinion.